Hello, welcome to Millennial Z and Boomer X. I am Boomer X, and
I'm Millennial Z.
yeah. And today we're going to talk about electric vehicles. Um, what impact do they have? Why all the fuss about them now? What kind of state are they in? Where are they going? And who's controlling this and for what reason? And more, in fact. And you'll get it from my point of view, being a cusp of boomer generation and Generation X, and his point of view. So being younger. So and it said one of the first things I read was in electric.com, and it was electric with a K, and it said that almost
Edgy.
all, yeah, got to be cute, but it said all of the, or not all, but most of the buyers currently for electric vehicles were white males, middle aged, earning over six figures. So, and everybody who's championing it, and it's like, well, it's kind of obvious when you look at the impediments as to why that is, because they're
The only people who can
expensive.
afford it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're freaking expensive. I
Yeah.
think I saw, one of the Teslas listed a little over $80,000. I don't know if it was their top of the line one or their not middle of the line one. I know it was the bottom because they have a bottom of the line one that's more like, when I say bottom, it's still not bad. It's just for a Tesla. It was more like 55 or 60 or something. But I remember
I
that was,
think they have one that's for 35 to 40,000, I believe. But
yeah, that's really inexpensive for a Tesla. So if that being the case, yeah, that would
the
be a,
amount of miles available, the travel time's a lot lower because of that.
yeah, the
You don't have as
performance is
many.
greatly less. Like it's
Right.
like, why even bother buying it if I can't use it in a way you want to use a four-wheel vehicle. But one of the things and statistics I saw, and this came from the Environment America and Research Policy Center, that said electric vehicles in 2011, there were just over 16,000 battery and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles sold in the US. Now they're including hybrids on this. So that's not even pure battery vehicles like the Tesla or some of the other newer ones that have come out. I mean, if you include hybrids, Prius has been out for a long time. That's why they go back to 2011, I guess. But it's also more inclusive of anything that's possible that uses a battery that doesn't need that internal combustion to move. It could go on the battery for a while before it goes out. But that 16,000 vehicles in 2011 had been sold in the US. As of December 2020, that number had grown a hundredfold to nearly 1.7 million vehicles. That's huge. And by mid 2021, the cumulative plug-in electric vehicle sales had surpassed 2 million. So that's crazy. That's well over a hundredfold. And that's in one decade.
That sounds like a lot, but I think just F-150s do that in a year. You
What
know
do you
what I mean?
mean?
Like the
Oh, you
amount of
mean the sales of them?
F-150s. Yeah,
Yeah,
just the
but
sales alone.
but also you're in Texas, so you see F-150s everywhere.
Well, I say
But
F-150 because it's the most sold car in
the
America, I
most
believe. Like
sold
what?
vehicle, yeah, and
Yeah, I
definitely
think if
truck,
one of yeah,
yeah, and most sold vehicle. But
one of them, if not the,
but for electric vehicle, it didn't even exist. 15 years ago, and now it's
Sure.
2 million. Now it's selling, as one of the major ones. And we talked about earlier who's buying them, and that's because they're the only ones that can afford them.
Hmm.
And that's it. The top three barriers to electric vehicles: uh, vehicle costs. It is vehicle costs. How much are they? Range, because people don't want to have to buy something if you can't go anywhere in them. Well, and charging infrastructure. Like
Right.
where are you gonna charge up when you run out? That's it. I mean
I mean, those are
that
huge limiting factors, though. Like
yeah,
huge.
that's the three main ones, and that is three. But my thing is, why are they so popular now? It's like the marketing's just like shoving it in our faces constantly about how good they are, what they're going to do for us, changing the planet for the better for everyone, and just making life better. Like you get butterflies and rainbows if you can get an electric vehicle. You know what I mean? And I'm
Well,
like,
part of the Green New Deal was they would want electric cars. I know Europe's trying to have all electric cars only sold by 2030, I believe, something like that.
Yeah,
2030 to
yeah.
2040.
And I know it's because of the Paris Accords or the Paris Agreement back in 2015, where they got all the countries to sign off on it. And Trump tried to get us out of it, but I think we're still on the list. They're still having us on the hook for it. I don't think he formally retracted, and I didn't research that up because when I did, we were still listed as having to be in compliance by by I think 2030, and we were, or 2050. I have some more notes later, but Biden is definitely on. He's still pushing that train, so it doesn't
Oh, for
matter if
sure.
Trump
Yeah.
got us out. He put us back on it, and it is what it is. But treehugger.com showed that less than 1% of all vehicles on the road are electric vehicles, and the U.S. electric vehicle market is dominated by a single player. Guess which one?
Yeah, Tesla, of
Yeah,
course.
oh, yeah. In 2020, Tesla sold more electric vehicles in the United States than all other manufacturers combined. Their sales accounted for nearly 79% of all new electric vehicles registered in the United States. Now, they don't sell hybrid vehicles, they just sell battery vehicles. So, 79% of all, so there's very few hybrids being sold now. Everybody's getting closer to full electric, full battery operated vehicles. And it was supposed that their market share may decline due to cost because Teslas are expensive. And the $7,500 federal tax credit that was given to electric vehicles, Tesla's not getting it anymore. It ended in 2019, December, because they sold over 200,000 vehicles. And when you do that, there's because that's part of the tax incentive that they were being used for Tesla. They had a number of tax incentives that were propping that company up. And other brands haven't sold 200,000 vehicles yet. So, you can still get one, I think, a federal tax incentive if you buy a different electric vehicle. But check your tax laws because I'm not sure. But that's what that article led me to believe on treehooker.com, and they seem to have their pulse on it. But one of the things you mentioned about Biden, CNN reported November 23rd, 2021, that President Joe Biden wants half the vehicles sold in the U.S. to be electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids by 2030.
Oh,
So,
okay. So America's standing is about half at least, which is
yeah, so that means 50% of all vehicles sold in 2030. That's 8 years away.
still crazy if you think about it, because that's still not even close to what Europe's trying. Even though Europe's trying an entire conversion, we just have so many more cars on the road than Europe.
Yeah, I think their whole conversion is set for 2035. I'm not sure. I just know about
Right.
US. It might be 2030, but complete conversion, that's 8 years. That's actually pretty short when you're going to mobilize your entire population to adopt a particular thing. And they still have working vehicles, a substitute now that, in my
Right.
opinion, operates better for the consumer than what they're putting out right now.
Yeah,
And
by
it's,
far.
you know,
I
um,
just don't see electric cars pulling the weight, doing anything that's reasonable where, get a 3500 dually. What electric car is doing that? What electric car is
Well,
doing that?
they're working on
Five
electric
wheel.
semis and the torque. Electric vehicles have torque out the wazoo. They can definitely pull it. The thing
They
is, they
definitely
might
can
only
pull it.
pull it 20 miles.
Right. That's the thing. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, you can definitely get the
so
power, but for how
unless you're
long?
going across
100
town, it's
miles,
going to be
maybe?
useless.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and not only that, you have the infrastructure limitations. That's a big one. Nobody really wants to talk about. Like, oh, they have the. I just saw a reading on they have a new litigation out that says if there's because of the infrastructure demand or the energy demand and the lack of infrastructure for electric cars, that when they're charging and if they have a power outage or a power need of some sort for somebody else, they're actually going to be allowed to take battery power out of your vehicle and then use it for whatever they need it for.
you mean
So
like emergency services?
yeah, so essentially, we can do like a radical situation where, it's a hurricane and there's power outages and they need to, use energy from your car to you move it to somewhere else for the grid for hospitals or something like that, right?
Right, right. So they'll be able to commandeer your vehicle for their whatever use, no matter what
Yep,
you're doing.
yep. Not
Yeah,
only that, but they're also going to set a tax. They're going to set an energy tax.
well, they're going to have to do that because they get huge taxes off of gasoline and refineries
Yeah.
and all that at different stages. Gasoline, most of the cost of gasoline is taxation at
Hmm.
different levels of creation, extraction, distribution, then retail sale. It's unbelievable. In some states, it's more than that, but a lot of it's federal and the rest of it's state, and then some of it's local. But yeah, so that'll be gone. So I suspect they'll be charging everybody a mileage use tax. Like there'll be little dongles in your vehicle that you have no say so about in order for them to have enough revenue to continue to keep up the roads, maintain infrastructure, and
Yeah.
things like that. Otherwise, it's not going to be viable at all to be able to have EVs. And they're definitely pushing EVs. They went from it's a novelty to now everybody's got to have it. And isn't it great for everybody that you have it? Which is kind of wild to me. I've never seen that in my life
That's,
a consumer product. You
I
know,
mean, that's the go-to propaganda for it. It helps the world, which
yeah, it's kind of yeah, that's
debatable.
something. And like I said, I saw an article, New York Times, last Wednesday, January 26, 2022. It said Tesla said that its profit leapt more than sixfold last year in 2020 to $5.5 billion for 2020. That's the highest total in its 19-year history, which means it's been in business for 19 years, but it's really only gotten press in the last 10, probably, right?
Yeah.
Or round about there, 12 maybe.
Yeah, he
Um,
almost lost that business a couple times in the beginning.
right. And the funny thing was, this is the first year it made any profit, was 2021. So 19 years, it's being supported by government subsidies. It made no profit. Any other business would have been bankrupt. So to me, it's clear that there's some sort of agenda that's being pushed. And, that's one of the reasons. Well, Elon Musk made his money off of PayPal. That's how he got rich. Then he decided to do those other businesses. He's just a smart guy. But Tesla was not one of those profitable businesses. To me, he was some kind of insider that knew how to get money and could make stuff happen. But how many? I mean, I want to start a business and they're going to give me enough money to live rich for 19 years until it makes a profit. No other business is that going to happen, but they're doing it for Tesla, you know. And his SpaceX business, same way. Sure, it's pulling in money and people are paying it, but it's not profitable either right now. If I remember the figures I read on it, but it's pretty crazy. Now, of course, he said in Business Insider that no one should be receiving government subsidies to do any of their business. Like, you didn't have a problem with it for 2 decades, and you're still doing it in one of your businesses, at least. But nobody, he doesn't want the competition. I mean, that's a classic businessman thing. He didn't want anybody to, but he had no problem receiving literally billions of dollars over the course of 2 decades to keep his businesses up. If it wasn't for subsidies, other than PayPal, and I'm sure he had a few others going on that were okay, but his major ones that the press constantly is putting up there, he wouldn't he wouldn't even have those businesses, you know, um,
Yeah.
which is nuts to me. But I find it. But Europe and China are really adopting electric vehicles. Canada too. They're all about it. And that's fine. That's those countries. If they want to do that, there's those governments and those people. But this one, the United States is supposed to be a little more liberty and freedom minded. Like, yeah, we can adopt it if you can convince us to do it. That's cool. But if not, then we don't want to. So the fact that they're pushing for a 50% by 2030 in 8 years, every vehicle on the road, every vehicle registered is going to be an electric vehicle. That's that's pretty that's pretty
Well, they don't
bold.
even consider it under the American freedom, choice. They consider it under, well, you're just doing good for the climate, for the world. So we should all be in hand and helping the world out. When in reality, electric vehicles don't really help out in the long run because the amount of waste they cause, the amount of disposable, because they're
Yeah, you
unibodied off of batteries, that you actually make them disposable vehicles. So now you have to get an entire another vehicle. You know how much material you're wasting doing that?
Well, that's the thing. I saw another one that California basically said, yeah, we don't know what to do with the lithium waste after. They have no idea where to put it, and if they don't know, they're on the cutting edge of electric vehicles. If they don't know what to do with it, they're like trying to figure it out. And California accounted for 41% of all U.S. electric vehicle sales in 2020. That's 41% total one state.
Yeah,
So
if we're getting on the on the details of Tesla's failures and commodities and the lack thereof, I should say, is I keep hearing horror stories about them having, some type of failure in the system, whether it be software or hardware, but it taking them months and months and then costing the customer himself lots of money because there's not too many dealerships around them. So they have a vehicle sitting there for months and months, and then that causes more problems because it's an electric vehicle, sitting there without a battery. So then they have battery issues because it's been sitting dead for months. Nobody's touched it. And they have to charge it back up, which causes the battery life to be even worse because the cycles get lower because it's been sitting there dead forever. So then you just
yeah,
lower the life charge. So then now
right.
and then you can't replace these batteries because they're part of the car. They're embodied in the frame of the car. So you
Yeah,
can't just
now
like,
they're
oh, let me
part of
just
the
take these batteries
frame.
out. Yeah,
Before they were just like a pack attached to the frame, but I think of the last year they were part of the frame, which makes it even more expensive to get it out.
right.
But I saw a thing, article on makeuseof.com back in 2019. Elon Musk said that replacing a battery module only cost between $5,000 and $7,000 in one of his Tesla, and that was before they made it a part of the frame, just as a as an
A
attachment
modular.
to the
Right.
frame. They're the heaviest things, so they want to keep it the center of gravity lower. So, but each Tesla model uses between 4 and 5 battery modules per vehicle. Yeah.
So you're
So
looking
you're
at
looking
20 to 35,000 depending.
right, and 20 and $35,000 per vehicle, and he quoted that in 2019 when things were cheaper. But the
Right. Of
inflation has
course.
gone up in the last 3 years. Add another 10 to 15% to that, so you're looking between 22 and a half and $38,000. To do that, and that's if you can find a place to do it. And how long is that going to take?
There
Now,
it is.
right.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, bam, we'll get it done. This is like some horror stories are like years. Some people a year and a half until some guy got his stuff together, and it wasn't anything crazy. Like I think he had to get the dash screen replaced, stuff like that. But
Oh, they're
all
waiting
the
on the parts. Yeah, because the semiconductors are frozen right now. It's nuts. There's
yeah,
the supply chain is just frozen right now, and that's a problem for everything. I mean,
hmm
even internal combustion energy, cars, they're slow. You can
yeah,
drive by a lot right now, and it looks desolate except for employee vehicles and a couple
right.
of
But think of how much market there is for that. Now we're talking about a niche market as EVs, where it's even less of a demand because there's
right. And the
less people have
CPU
them.
demand is much higher. They need a much more modern CPU.
Yeah,
Than other ones. But yeah, that's great. 20 to 35,000. Now, I think the batteries last a lot longer than your typical lithium ion. I saw that they were one place was bragging they last like 300,000 miles on a Tesla before the batteries are useless, which is impressive.
that is impressive.
And I saw a guy that was weeping, and another one that it cost him about almost $25,000 to get the battery switched out in his car, and his car was like, I think it was like 7 years old or something, and that's definitely longer than like usually in a phone. 4 years, 5 years, and you're done.
Well,
Your
you just
battery
say
has.
a lithium car battery is about 3 to 5 years still. Even with like an acid, comparatively, it's about the same
Yeah,
amount
to
of lifetime.
start your car, like the alternator, and start the engine, it's like 3 to 5 years. So you're looking at it's going to be significantly more than that. So there's obviously these batteries are much greater.
Yeah, the architecture is definitely superior for sure.
Yeah, much greater durability and reliability. So you're looking at you know 5 to 7 years probably. This guy, I think it was 7, and that's impressive for a battery as far as I'm concerned. But still, when the battery goes out, there is nothing you can do with it. It is a
It's
paperweight.
it's a throwaway now
Yeah,
with it being in part of the frame.
and you're looking at between 22,000 and 38,000 to replace it, depending on where you go, what you have, and what you need done. And if it's going to be a part of the frame, it's going to be more than that. That was then, that when it was attached to the frame, not part of the frame, meaning inside the beams, those hollow tubes. So that I can't even imagine.
Yeah, they're gonna have to define some way to make that modular.
Yeah, you're
Otherwise,
you're
you
essentially forced to buy a new vehicle every 7-ish years.
yeah, you're a
Yeah.
Gillette razor into Teslas now. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, that's essentially it. But I mean, half the vehicles are going to be that way at least. And if they force it, if they just pass a law, you're not going to have any choice. And I think California did exactly that. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Law I looked up. starting in 2030, California will require all light-duty autonomous vehicles operating in the state to emit zero emissions. I thought it was 2035. So you're looking at 2030, 100% new bill signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom on Thursday, September 24th, 2021. So that's, yeah, all of them. So, that means they're going to have semis and everything. Now it says autonomous vehicles. So does that mean it didn't say passengerless, or driverless? It said autonomous. What do they mean by that definition? Does it have to be, or do they mean it can be driven by anyone? So that's interesting, and I'm sure they wrote it that way to argue it later, knowing how politics is.
Right.
But 100%, that's nuts. And one of them that got me said the Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy, on December 5th, 2021, said there are fewer than 46,000 public electric vehicle stations currently in the U.S. 46,000 nationwide. Most of them are in California. And that the massive $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill of Joe Biden is a key piece of the president's economic agenda. So, that's good. So they're dumping public funds to make this happen. So obviously it's part of their agenda. And Forbes in November 13, 2021 said the electricity grids can handle electric vehicles easily. They just need proper management, which basically is a non-sentence. Of course, electricity flows in them easily, but
that's a
they need proper
flat out lie. That is a flat out lie.
It's a nonsense. It's like, well, yeah, if you set them up properly, it'll easily handle it. Like, well, it can handle it now. Well, sure it can, because people are charging vehicles now. We're talking about when
I'm getting power outages in here in Houston. I'm getting power outages in Houston because of the demand, because we're set on a lot of our right now.
Right now, yeah.
Let alone any type of, any reasonable percentage of people using EVs. 15, let's say 15% start using EV,
right?
Which it isn't by any means.
No,
that would destroy the grid.
Yeah, of course it would. I mean, it can't do it. Like I said, we just said that less than 1% of all vehicles on the road currently are electric vehicles.
You remember that huge crazy winter we had in Houston, and then people were getting all mad because their electric bills are crazy? That would be the norm if they continued it, and the market was the same way for the electric grid.
I mean, they have brownouts in California and on the East Coast every summer right now. And we're not even talking about how the cold affects, electric vehicles and batteries. AAA said cold weather can cut electric car range over 40%. Yeah, over 40%. And that's definitely dependent upon how cold it gets. It can get up to 60%. And that's, the battery holds less of a charge. Current doesn't flow as well. And you might not even be able to access those places. So where are you going to go? And a lot of that's due to, of course, running the heater. But if you're freezing to death, you can't exactly drive anywhere. You have to run the heater when it's that cold. If you're in Canada, what are they going to do? If your battery only holds a 30 to 50% charge, and then your range is reduced by 40%, where are you going? You'd have to charge up every day just to go, 40, 50 miles, and it takes how long to charge it up completely? An hour? 45 minutes? I don't know. It'd take longer than that if it was cold. I know that for sure.
Well, we're going to go off of Tesla's model. They have a fast charging, and I believe the fast charging charges it until 75% or 70% or 80%, somewhere around there. And then the last 20% takes like another hour. So it takes like 30 minutes to do 80% or something like that.
Yeah, 20. So 30 minutes to do an 80% charge. Well, that's impressive.
Something like that. I might be giving them way more leeway than it actually is, but we'll say that, because I don't remember the exact amount figures.
Right, but really, if that's the case, it's not going to be that way when it's cold. That's if all the temperatures and everything's perfect, 80% in 30 minutes. But if it's reduced by the cold, it's only going to charge up maybe halfway. So you might get 40% in 30 minutes. I mean, and then you can only go half the range. Well, what are you gonna do? You know, it's just not a feasible thing. Yeah, that's just nuts to me. One of the things I saw, the Brattle Group. I don't know if you've heard of it before. BRATTLE group estimates that the U.S. will require 1.25 million public charging outlets to support a projected 20 million electric vehicles by 2030. And that's not even half. That's just half the vehicles. That's just what they think will sell. That's just a projected sale. There are about, I think, 270 to 220 million registered vehicles in the country. They don't know because there's always, you know, and it's right now it's like less than 1%, and they're causing some, electric issues. But they have 46,000 charging stations now. That means they'll need 1.25 million in 8 years. That's a lot of work. I don't see that much construction going on right now. Do you?
No, it's definitely not going to happen in 8 years. It's just not
Yeah,
gonna.
yeah. It's just. I mean, it could if they mobilize everything in the next 2 years. The last 2 years, they could
If
do it.
they manage that, that would be one of the biggest pioneers of infrastructure that's happened in the past 50 years, maybe
Since
maybe
since the
more.
new yeah since the New Deal with FDR, you know,
It would be astronomical, if they
yeah,
manage that in 8 years.
or the World War II effort. It'd be that big. It'd be like the
Right.
war effort, them putting stuff out there. And I'm just wondering, why are they pushing it so hard? I mean, like current vehicles, actually, even when you include everything they use during their carbon emissions for fuel, end up in the life of the vehicle, and because they're like 95% recyclable, which is not the case with electric vehicles because of the lithium ion and other chemicals they use, current vehicles are more efficient in their life. We've just gotten super good at making efficient vehicles. You know,
Yeah, they're
um,
putting turbos and everything now too, so you're getting
gas,
smaller and smaller
yeah, they use
engines,
a lot less gasoline than they used to. That's the other
cleaner
thing,
gas with the detergents they use. They know how
right?
to better catalytic converters on
And there's
them.
almost yeah, there's almost no. I mean, there's very few emissions, and they keep trying. And then, so I'm wondering why the big put. Like somebody's going to make a pile of money, more than Tesla, off of this. Off of these things, especially with a push this big, this quick.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's just what I think as a Boomer X.
Well, well, let's just do it towards. I just want to know the usuals on because people have different opinions on. Would you drive? Would you let? First off, let's do the crazy one. Would you prefer to have something drive you somewhere? Say you had to go to Texas to see me. Would you just prefer something to just I get in and it drives me and I get to read a book and go to sleep, or whatever?
I I have an old school thing. I like to be on the highway, be in control, and that long, that far. I mean, on the interstate, I might let it go because it's more like a train. You just get on and you can just go in a straight
Right.
thing.
It's like a shuttle.
Yeah, almost like getting on an independent car shuttle, con, you know, in a convoy,
Hmm.
But I might be all right with that. But I would prefer to drive it myself, especially if I'm on a motorcycle. I mean, yeah, I want
Well,
to be I'm driving myself,
yeah.
and I prefer to be on a motorcycle. And the electric motorcycles are pretty impressive. They're about 90 to 95% there. The new Harley is like 95% there, as far as
I
I know.
haven't looked at it, but I have not been impressed at all. But any of the iterations of electric motorcycles so far,
Yeah,
actually.
the latest zeros are pretty good. They're about 90%. I wouldn't do it. They're too small, and they're small so they can have a decent range. And the Harley doesn't have nearly the range, but I mean, the way it looks and the way it handles and does is about the last 5% is all about range. The power
Well,
is right there. It just won't go very far. If you're not, I mean, it claims a range over 100 miles, but in actual practice, no. You're looking, but as a commuter vehicle, it's fine. If you're
hmm,
if you're commuting less than 40 miles, it's fine.
right.
But anything else, it's not like we like to take long rides. You come in to visit me, you ride 5 to 6 hours, depending on traffic and what's going on. No, there's no way. Um,
Yeah,
right
I'd
now,
have to take like two breaks at least and let it charge for that to happen.
right, 2 brakes, and each brake, even on a motorcycle battery, each brake is going to run you half hour to an hour
Yeah.
waiting. So it's going to, instead of being a 5 to 6 hour run, it's going to be uh, 8 to 10 hour run. Depending upon if you're waiting in line because other people are using it, how long it actually takes, how cold it is, what the traffic's going to be like. You thought you were going to be this time, but now the traffic's going to be different. So you might be going through rush hour through a couple of major metropolitan areas. So it's going to throw you back even farther.
Also, it's not fun waiting at a gas station or wherever I'm doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's not.
right,
It's
right.
not enjoyable at all.
No, you're just literally sitting there twiddling your thumbs, like, oh, you can get something to eat. I don't need to eat. I left before I left the house. Why should I have to spend more money just because I'm charging up my vehicle? I'm just charging up my vehicle. Like
Right.
you kill it. It's what should take a quarter of a day is now taking all the day I'm not sleeping. And that's if they have the charging stations that should be there for you to do it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's tough, man. That's a tough hurdle to get over. I'm going to be an internal combustion guy probably for a while. Like I wouldn't mind having an electric vehicle, but it would be certainly a recreational. It wouldn't be a serious one to me. If I wanted to go on a real trip and not worry about it, I
Right.
would definitely be on, internal combustion. I would not be. I
It,
would
it
not be
would.
on electric one.
They'd
Electric
have to
one.
have a lot better infrastructure for me to want. They'd have to have a lot better software. Or they have to have a lot better. Just everything have to be a lot crisper for me to want to just go in and say, "Oh yeah, I'll just put my life in the hands of this autonomous robot thing." From it, you know what I mean? Like it'd have to be quite. I'd have to let a lot of gerbils go through that first before I went through
Well,
that.
I don't know that motorcycles have the automatic stuff. I mean, they have the radar that'll start braking.
I'm not talking about. I'm just talking about cars in general. I'm just talking about
Oh
like
yeah, yeah,
for the
yeah,
option of some, because it is very appealing. You don't want to freaking drive 5 hours all the time.
yeah.
I
But
I just want to see my family. I don't want to do 5 hours of driving.
that's
But
passengerless. That's automatic driving vehicles. That's not electric vehicles per se.
sure,
That's a whole different thing. With electric vehicles, I just like for a car, as long as you don't have to go anywhere away and you have the extra money and you don't mind waiting at a power station, sure, it's fine.
I just
Um,
don't see them ever having. I mean, they could, but it would be very niche. By the time they get autonomous driving down, it's mostly going to be incorporated into electric vehicles. I just don't see them otherwise doing it for combustible engines. The amount of electricity you'd have to have involved, all the sensors, all the
well,
computer
they would just
processing,
have
like
to
just have it on electric vehicles.
include sensors and internal motors, like they did with the EVs. That's all. I don't think that's as big of a thing. Autonomous vehicles would be another subject. I don't think that would be as long as it's designed from the ground up as a autonomous, self-driving vehicle. Then okay, it would be difficult to retrofit one. I think, but
Yeah. Well, I
that's
just think by the time the technology's there for it, we're most likely going to be pretty
yeah.
much electric vehicles.
Right, right. And then, of course, 20 years after that, everybody, even though we haven't been convicted of a DUI, will have to blow in a tube before it lets us take manual control to make sure we're not, impaired in any way. Or do one of those, CAPTCHA tests like, do you see, how many bikes do you see? And to make sure you're not impaired, you're not too
That might be interesting. You might not even need a driver's license anymore if you just
vehicle.
I just want to go here and the vehicle drives me. I don't need a driver's license. What do I need a
Yeah,
driver's license for?
like those taxis in Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. They just turn Johnny Cab, or whatever. So, yeah, maybe so. The science fiction is right at our door. I mean, we're living in it from a variety of ways, but you know, right now we're not there. We're still at the threshold. It's just they're forcing on it, and sure, you can make things work if you don't really have to use it. It doesn't compare to what we're currently using, but it's like being foisted upon us, even though it's a substandard product right now.
Yeah, that's yeah, I definitely agree with that. It is definitely being forced upon us, despite the lack of very obvious abilities for it to actually go somewhere right now.
Yeah, that I don't get that. How do you like? My generation wouldn't appreciate it all, even though my generation's the biggest buyers of it. I think only as a novelty and because they thought it was cool, and as people with a lot of money. That's not all of it for sure.
Because you'll get to be the Jetsons, right?
Yeah, no, that's flying through the air. That's a whole different. But yeah, like I don't know how your generation looks at it though, other than well, yeah, let's be good for the environment because I want my kids to grow up in it. And that's a noble thing. You should be that way to some degree. But if they're not telling you the truth about how it actually works, how can you make informed decisions?
I'm not sure, and I know at least 3 people that own electric vehicles, and
Uh-huh.
none of them have gotten it for the it's better for the environment. They got it because they liked them, like the way they look.
Cool
They have a
fact.
certain lifestyle too. They don't go anywhere really. They live in an urban area. Everywhere they want to go is quite close to them, so they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about the range at all.
So it's like within
And
5 miles, right?
it's a little bit of a Tesla culture with that as well. It's all Teslas that they own, and there's a bit of a Tesla culture. Same thing with Jeep culture. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
own a Jeep, I get to do Jeep things with the Jeep people. Same thing with Tesla people. So that's
Yeah.
pretty much it I've seen. I haven't seen anybody like, well, I just want to make sure I'm health conscious and environment conscious. No, they don't. None of that.
Yeah, well, that's something. I haven't. I've known a couple people with them, and they did it for the cool factor, and they just like the vehicles, like you said.
Hmm.
And one of them kind of mentioned as an aside, like, yeah, it's good for the environment too. Like that's a bonus, but that really wasn't why.
Oh,
He just like that's part of the consideration. And okay, fair enough. But
right.
yeah, bottom line, if you're spending that much money, you're buying it because you think it's cool,
Yeah.
or you wouldn't get it for whatever
Right.
reason, and that's fine. It's your money.
Hmm.
But like I said, they would have to make really great advancements in the next few years to make it a viable thing for people. Like, driving 6 hours to see you in a Tesla is not a thing. I'm not
Right.
doing it. Even if they had a station everywhere.
I think you could barely do it if you went 50 miles the entire time, and you got like
Well,
a really high end one.
Well, yeah, I got the extra, modules put in and stuff, but
The Gran Turismo, if that's a version of it.
right. But the thing of it is, it would need to have, it would still need to have, and when I got there, I'd be totally dry,
Yeah,
but it would need to have a charging station halfway to realistic, because if you're on the interstate, you're not gaining electricity from stopping and going.
yeah,
It bleeds out much faster, you
yeah.
know.
All that kinetic,
Yep.
charges you get from braking,
Yeah,
none of that's
yeah,
gonna
you're
happen.
not getting that. In the city, you get far better mileage, and that's the mileage they typically quote to you. The city driving, when it's better, that they
Hmm.
recharge as you're braking.
Well, also this traffic lights, you get to stop, so it's not really
Yeah,
using any battery. Blah blah
right.
blah.
Yeah, people. But when you're on the interstate, just straight shot, like would be 99% of the journey to see you. Um, yeah, it would go down far greater than their claimed range.
Hmm.
If I was lucky, it might do 60 to 70% of that, and it wouldn't make it. So I'd need a charging station at least halfway there, and even
Yeah,
then, it would take at least an hour, as long as the weather was perfect, to charge up. And that's if it wasn't full from other people needing to charge up. If everybody else was driving an electric vehicle, you're not going to be pulling up to the fuel station, filling up in 5 minutes, paying with your card or your phone, and driving off. That's gone. That that
not
that will never happen. You
not
know.
anytime soon. At least they're definitely gonna have to start implementing some much better architecture for batteries for that to ever happen.
Yeah, batteries just don't work that way. You and I know that. So
Yeah, not the
I guess
batteries that are out right now. That's for sure.
yeah, I guess it's one way to keep people from going away too much. You're going to make sure that everybody's going to stay within like 150-mile range. Because then,
Hey, I'm sure convenience stores will start making a lot more profit. People are just sitting there, nothing to do.
oh yeah, 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 and people will be going on fewer vacations. If they can't drive
Yeah,
their electric vehicle to the train or a boat, a ship, or a airport, they're not going because their cars just make it
that might be
untenable.
it. That might cause the value of public transportation to just be that much more higher, and we start looking into train building a lot more as transportation.
Yeah, I see that as a planned thing. I know that sounds conspiracy theorist, but I really do. It's
It's not a
almost
bad
like
one. They have a couple plans already, and from Houston to certain areas, they've had those plans for 10 years. They just haven't done anything with it. But this might
yeah,
be the push they need to really get it going.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. They've been talking about that, for a while between every metro area. But with this, it would almost be a necessity, especially if you're a commuter from one metro area to another. It's not. It wouldn't be viable with electric vehicles. Everybody's forced to have it because nobody's selling internal combustion anymore.
Here's the real conspiracy on it: is for all those trains to work, the government has to buy a bunch of land for all those for that track for the train to be on, and that's
Oh,
where they get all that land for the
well,
incentive.
we went over that, 140 years ago with eminent domain. They'll just get it, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, exactly, and that's how they
That
acquire it.
is done. People got to keep the engine moving. So,
Hmm.
that'll be that. But I just the thing of it is that the electric vehicle concept is nice, but it's still not what they purport it to be. It doesn't create less pollution as we speak. Why don't they perfect it and get it better before the push? Why pushing it now? That's the only thing I get.
Yeah, and if it does, it's genuinely insignificant margins, not even worth mentioning. Like, really, honestly, if you're saying it's better for the environment, you're talking small margins.
I actually, as far as I know, it's not. It's not better.
I'm just
It's
giving the
better
benefit
when
of the
it's
doubt.
running,
Right,
but in the total life of the vehicle, it's not, because
right.
you have more pollutants that you have to deal with in the creation and the destruction of the electrical vehicle than you
Yeah,
do of an internal.
especially implementation of it being disposable at this point, it being part of the frame
Right.
and everything like that. It's actually, I'm sure when that starts becoming into the statistics, it will, if they're genuine with the statistics,
Yeah.
it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see that.
Well, I'm thinking, like I said, they got 2 million vehicles, that are electric vehicles right now, and that includes hybrids. So they still have a small internal combustion engine in there, and they're looking at, increasing that to 50%. Now, if there are 270 million internal combustion vehicles in the United States registered in the United States right now, 270 million vehicles, that means they would have to have 100 times more to have 200 million electric vehicles on the road, and they're going to do that. So for half that, say 170, it's 130. So 2 million, for
70 times
130,
that,
70,
60
yeah,
times that,
70
yeah,
times
65
that,
times that.
60 to 70 times that, 65 times that. They're going to do that in 8 years.
All the dealerships are starting to do it. I mean, they even discontinued the Hellcat. By God.
I saw that.
And
Yeah.
they're trying to do an electric Hellcat. Well, it won't be
Yeah.
called a Hellcat, maybe it'll be called something else, but the Challenger will be.
I mean, they are cool. They make no noise. The loudest thing in an electric vehicle is the sound of the wind if you crack a window, and the sound of the tires if the window is completely open. It's pretty quiet,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. But it'll takeoff is unbelievable. They put any kind of electric motor in there, especially now they're more efficient. The motors over each wheel, and some of the electric vehicles are two wheels, or
Traction control is amazing on them.
yeah, it'll snap your head off. They can easily do all-wheel drive, and they can make them. They'll get better as time goes on too. But they could have done this in a laboratory. They didn't. Why now? What? Why force? Why using us as beta testers in the real world, and making us spend more money than we have, when you can get a decent vehicle now for 35 grand? You're going to have to spend twice that for something that's not nearly as usable.
No, I see that as part of the growing pains of how capitalism works. You need profits, or
But
you
it's
need at
not
least some type
capitalism,
of.
because they're
Yeah,
being subsidized. Tesla's been
sure.
subsidized for 2 decades.
I don't. Yeah, that's very true. I agree on that. But I'm talking about like just the meaning for R&D, or seeing the potential of it being something.
Yeah, but if there was a real need, they couldn't keep up with making enough electrical vehicles, like the Model T Ford and all the other vehicles they were making in the 20s and 30s. Nobody could make vehicles fast enough. The reason they had salesmen back then was to take bids on the sale of a car. Now it's the opposite. Everybody's trying to argue the sale price down, when they're going to buy a car. Back then, people were throwing money at them to get a car, because, so if there was a genuine desire and need for it, you wouldn't have to subsidize anything. Companies would be popping up like mushrooms to get in on it and make it. So that's capitalism. This is the opposite of that. We're going to tell you what you're going to buy, and you're going to like it because it's better for you, even though it's not as good, even though it doesn't work as well, even though it's not as utilitarian, even though it's got some growing pains and it's going to cost you more. Yeah, you're going to like it. Here you go. That is crazy to me.
Yeah, but
yeah, I don't know why people aren't in arms about it, but it is definitely a different world.
I think I don't think it's. I just don't think it's feasible. I don't think they're really going to enforce it when it really comes down to, because they're not going to get there in time. It's just not going to happen. The
So
timeline they have in front is just not going to happen.
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, they're definitely not going to make, over 1 million charging stations in the next 8 years. And that's if they had 20 million vehicles on the road. If they had 130 million vehicles on the road, they'd need a lot more than that. If half of the vehicles on the road were actually electric vehicles, they would need a lot more than that.
We're not even talking the amount of you need more energy. You just need to provide
Yeah,
more energy
there
for
aren't
all
nearly
that.
enough power plants.
Yes.
No, there aren't nearly enough power. The number of power plants would have to go up significantly. There was a report that said, "Oh no, if 10% of the vehicles on the road, we'd only need, about 10 to 15% more energy. That's 10%. Well, they just said they wanted 50% of all vehicles on the road in 2030 to be, using electricity to propel themselves. So you telling me you need 50% more power? I don't see them building any more power plants to you. I haven't seen it, and they
People
need
are
a
going to have
lot.
to start. They're going to have to start embracing nuclear power plants a lot quicker
Yeah,
if they want to do that.
at least solar for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
wind power is neat, and you see them go up, but they've been shown wind power has shown to be problematic with maintenance and cost. It's just not a feasible thing right now with current technology and build structure. And it's just they tried it really hard in Europe, and it's too variable. If you don't have wind, you don't have power. I mean, and they've done it in places, so they're switching over to more nuclear and more solar over there for good reason. Learn from their lessons. Don't repeat their mistakes. But yeah, you would need at least 50% more power, and then you're going to need the lines, to do it. The current lines can't handle that load, so I don't see them doing that. And this
So
is
you'd have
all
to
supposed to be in eight
you have to
years.
do all those lines, more power plants, more stations in 8 years. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll see you then.
yeah, they act like it's like right around the corner. 8 years is almost right around the corner for that. It's a revolutionary change. Like half the vehicles you see are going to be electric. Like, yeah, it's nice,
Can we? Is
but
there a bet I can make somewhere for this? Can I
yeah,
put down some money?
I'm sure Vegas might have some odds, and they're
Yeah.
including hybrid vehicles, so you would still need gas station to fill up the little 1.1 liter, turbo 4 cylinder. But you would still need at some point to plug in,
1 liter 4 cylinder.
yeah, one turbo 4 cylinder. But at some point you're still going to need to plug in that because it's going to be pulling all those batteries in that electric motor. So your gas mileage is going to be terrible if you don't have a charge in that thing. So you won't be able to go cross country on that thing to any real degree. It's still not a cross country vehicle. It's just a just in case vehicle if I run out of juice.
Yeah, they're just going to start having smaller and smaller engines to compensate for the lack of infrastructure they have. It's going to have a 0.5 liter 4 turboed engine.
Yeah, you're gonna see 2 cylinder motors in there. Like 2 cylinder
Two-stroke.
twin turbos. Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah.
Oil gas mixture in there. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good
Yeah,
for the
a
environment.
two-stroke. Well, no, those are highly pollutant, so I don't think.
Right. That's me. The ironic part of it. It's like we just start going backwards for some reason
Yeah, I don't.
because
That's certainly possible. I don't see them doing that. I think they'll go to full, battery before they do
yeah,
that. But
of
I
course.
don't.
I would
I
hope.
see more fully electric vehicles coming out than I do see hybrid vehicles coming out. You know.
Well, I mean, they're definitely getting to the peak of trying to be as efficient as possible. The gas usage. They're even the Tundra is coming out the six-cylinder turbo Tundra.
Right,
They
right,
used to be the old school. Old school. They had the V8 forever.
right. And it
So
was
they
bulletproof.
finally changed it. Yep.
Yeah, those vehicles got over 300,000 miles all the time. If you did the basic maintenance on them, change filters and oil, 300,000 was easy. I don't. It'll be interesting to see how these electric vehicles act. The thing is, electric vehicles have fewer moving parts. It's
Yeah.
theoretical that you'd have fewer breakdowns if they get the software dialed in and the electrical components dialed in and all the modules dialed in. The real issue is going to be batteries.
Yeah. Well, that's the main issue I've seen is it's electric issues, which we've had forever since cars have become more and more,
Yeah,
involved with computers is electric issues.
and
And
shame on you if it gets flooded.
oof,
You think you
yeah,
have
done.
gas problems? if water gets up to the floorboard on that, and I know they're supposed to be sealed, but there has to be
Yeah.
some way to let off that heat in a battery
Yeah.
because they get hot. So they're not going to be totally sealed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They're done.
it's going to be interesting to see how they solve that little engineering problem. And they can be in coast and have water moving through them like a radio. I mean, they have all kind of ways to do it. But all you need is the tiniest hairline crack. Done. Water
Yeah,
finds it.
there's no taking off, the floorboards and putting a new wire harness in, then you're good to go.
No,
None
no,
of that
you're,
anymore.
you're through. It's going to infect the whole thing. It'll be like a virus, just ruining the entire thing. Done. The whole vehicle, everything, not just the batteries, everything. Um, and yeah, I see insurance going up quite a bit. Not just the note that's going to kill you. It's going to be the insurance because, and the other thing, getting a wreck, you're going to have hazmat teams come out every time, not just for potential gasoline and radiator fluid. It's going to be because you have battery acid everywhere.
That actually brings up a good point. They actually have started implementing more training for firefighters and such because of the frequency of electric vehicles and knowing how to deal with them. Because it's an electric fire. You don't just put water on an electric
Exactly.
fire.
Exactly my point. Not just hazmat, but it burns different, and it doesn't stop until it's finished. It creates its own oxygen. It already has a flame. Now what? The metals there are burning of their own accord, creating oxygen. So, yeah, you're splashing water on it ain't going to get it. And some of the foam they use isn't going to work either. It's going to be a totally new ball. And certainly they can convert, but that's more money, but more taxes. That's
Well, not only that, they're volatile. They explode on fire. Stuff happens.
Yeah. If a battery starts to go bad, it could blow up on you.
And it's encased by metal, so that's called
Yeah,
shrapnel.
Shrapnel coming up through the floorboards.
Right.
That's fun times. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how that works.
I suppose no more dangerous than, I guess, supposedly a gas tank exploding.
Yeah, you got a bomb in front of you, that's timed perfectly in a small chamber under pressure, going down the road. It's firing off multiple times per second in each chamber. So that electrical stuff they can deal with. I'm just thinking about usability though, that the era of, I think me and the wife and kids are going to get in the family truckster and go to the Grand Canyon.
Getting the new Cybertruck.
Yeah, that big station wagon like National Lampoon, that was the first one.
Right.
Those days are over. You're not going to be able to do that and it be an actual fun trip because you're going to be stopping every 150 to 200 miles to plug in for an hour.
It's definitely not there for quite a while. They're definitely have to use huge steps and leaps and bounds in the technology for battery for that to be a thing again. If they really want to implement this in 8 years,
they would have to triple battery efficiency, and you would still be stopping every 450, to 550 miles at triple the efficiency, and that's what at 50 miles an hour, 9 to 11 hours, a full day of driving for most people, and then you could plug in somewhere. Which would be okay, is like I said, as long as the weather was good, as long as the roads weren't bad, as long as you weren't caught in a traffic jam just sitting or having to run the AC or the heat.
We're assuming they're able to extend the battery longevity without, compromising the charge time.
Exactly.
What if they don't? What if they have to have longer charge times because you have a longer battery,
Yeah, exactly. Like it used to be an hour because that's how much energy those things transferred. And that's what the power plants can produce. And that's what the lines can tolerate. If you have a greater range, that means instead of sitting there for an hour, you're going to be sitting there for 3 hours, to fill it up. Yeah, that makes that vacation you're not going to be driving anymore.
Yeah. I think the best way for them to really, really tackle that is to make the charging time lower first, because otherwise, I think if they made it down to 10 minutes, it'd be much more palatable.
You know how that works. The more energy you have, basic physics, the more heat you generate, especially being transferred. Current technology is not even close to being able to handle something like that. And even if it could, the cost for the materials for that would be astronomical. 80 to 90 grand for an electric vehicle to be able to do that. It would triple that. You might be looking at $250,000 to make that kind of transfer. And it'd have to be on a special machine. Only certain ones could do that. to handle that load and transfer that much. I mean, you're looking at a whole different thing. I'm just thinking mass produced for the general public. Like this is what everybody's kind of in, and everything's kind of close. Like you're going to have, a 10 to 20% variable in what in range and ability and things like that. But it's still going to be an electric vehicle. The technology is what it is, and it's going to
Yeah,
improve.
I mean, they have, they've been talking about graphene batteries, and those have some
Yeah,
pretty impressive stats on them, but mass
theoretically.
fabrication is the problem,
Yeah, theoretically, have you actually seen any working yet?
right? That's the problem. Is none
Yeah,
of them are available to civilians by any means.
right.
So, getting it out into the public is the biggest hurdle there, and that's the hurdle for any item, you know, making
Well,
millions of them for everybody to use.
I'm wondering why, if that's a viable technology, and this is something that's being pushed as part of the government agenda, why aren't they doing that? Why aren't they saying, look, these graphene batteries are used in the military and special operations conditions and space type technology. Here you go, knock yourselves out.
So I do know from the last time I read it, although it's been over a year, was that they just couldn't figure out a way to mass produce these things.
Ah,
So it's
that is
been
probably the lamest excuse I've ever. They can mass produce anything that they want. Seriously,
well,
I mean that's just a
apparently not.
process.
It is a process, but I'm not sure what the process involves. Whether it be too expensive to mass produce it, it just wouldn't
That
be
might be the stumbling block, but they can. They just choose not to. But that sounds
right.
like complete nonsense about we don't know how to mass produce. If you can produce it, you can mass produce it. It's just a matter of setting it up. Just a matter of engineering. It's not a matter of ability. You know,
Right.
so it's making you think like, oh, we can't do it. You can, you just won't. Now, why not?
Well, if
Uh,
you really want to go into the conspiracy of it all, maybe they just don't have enough. The right people don't have enough money invested in that, and they want to see theirs get pushed first.
that sounds like the thing that's made the most sense about it. Yeah, like the people who are involved in this right now aren't involved in that, and they wouldn't make any money if we started doing that. Yeah, that sounds more. And I hate to be that guy, but man, that's the only thing that makes sense. Like
That's what
people.
it's to be that guy, but that's what happens a lot.
Yeah, that is what happens. I've seen it too many times in my life, over and over and over again. Politically connected people getting rich, and then politicians getting rich, and all at the expense of the taxpayer because it's taxpayer money. And
Oh yeah,
then
just somebody who's a public
work,
servant
it
just
does
so
just like
happens to triple their net worth for some
yeah, just
reason.
like
Weird.
those solar companies that blew up 10 years ago. Now most of them are gone. The people that ran them are rich, and they went bankrupt because they just couldn't sell enough. The market wasn't ready yet. I'm wondering if that's going to be the case for electric vehicles. Like that's the thing now. Like solar's not going to go away. I think solar is going to be the future in a lot of ways, but
I
it
do
was too
too.
early, and a bunch of people got rich, and you didn't really hear much about it. And now it's still there, but it's in the background. And
No,
now like
it's
EVs
getting
are
more.
huge, and people are getting rich. And I'm wondering, is this too soon, or we 10 years ahead of the curve, or what?
I've actually been keeping up with solar panels. I am quite interested in solar panels. They've actually have been improving slowly but steadily.
Yeah,
They, it was from 5 to 10 years now to 15 to 20 years. Their efficiency's still there, and it's a 95 to 100% efficiency for 15 to 20 years, which is quite impressive. They actually do pay themselves off.
I don't think it's 95. Oh, you mean as far as paying off, as far as value?
Longevity
Yeah,
for the amount
as
of
far as
energy they
value.
get. Right.
Yeah, not as far as working in energy transfer, but
Oh
and
yeah, energy transfer. I'm serious. Like yeah, 95 to 100% for 15 years.
no, and I think I might be misunderstanding because like even the best solar panels only transfer like 75 to 85% sunlight.
Oh no, not efficiency on the level of. I'm saying for the amount that they do. Like say they only do
Oh,
80%, but
that's what I meant.
100% efficiency on 80% for
Yeah,
15
that's
years.
what I meant. Like
Yeah,
value.
yeah. No, they're not. You have heat dispersion. You have all these other
Right,
things. There's
right.
never gonna be
And energy
100%.
transference and everything else. So
Right.
yeah,
No,
but
no,
what you're
no.
saying is, well, they pay for themselves after a few years, and then they continue to pay for themselves for like 15 years. Yeah, that's impressive. It used to be like you said, 5 years max, and it was pretty much done. It was
Yeah, it was
corroded,
bad.
unusable. And you tried to get out of it what you could. But now, yeah, and that's good. Like I said, I think that's going to be a large part of everybody's future. And I've always thought that was cool, even since I was a little kid. But again, that was pushed very hard 10 years ago. And it's still going on in research, but it puttered out. You don't see much about it anymore, but every once in a while. But then it was in the news all the time, like electric vehicles now are in the news all the time, and they're pushing it. And the federal government was pushing it then, and they subsidized all sorts of companies that made millions. People made millions in it. Now they're gone. They're nowhere. Like, where'd that money go? What happened? So it was interesting, to say the least. And nobody's going to prison that I'm aware of. I mean, the FBI is investigating, but they continue to investigate, but no indictments are filed. Nobody's talking about it on the news. Like, what happened? And I'm wondering if that's going to be the EV's future in the next couple of years, 8 years. Like, they can make a lot. You can make a lot happen with 8 years when you're the authorities. You control the money. But that still seems pretty close to go from 2 million to 130 million vehicles. Half the vehicles on the road are going to be electric. That's beyond impressive to me. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Beyond impressive, to say the least.
Yeah. And again, you still haven't overcome infrastructure issues. You still haven't overcome cold issues and practical issues. And what about the streets? I mean, I'm curious to see how that's going to go. Next episode, we're going to talk about why is everyone quitting their job, or the Great Resignation. What's going on, and hear from two generation perspectives. And I left mine, to take an early retirement about 7 months ago, 7 months ago, and I can offer my personal insight. And you yourself are looking at, you're not going to be in your job forever. So you'll eventually quit. And most people don't stay in one job forever like they did in the 50s. Like, you stay there 40 years, get the watch, pat on the back, go home, and then you have a heart attack in a year. Most people don't
living the dream.
Most people now have 6 or 7 different careers, in your generation. From what I read, I don't know if that's actually true. Why is everyone quitting their job? So that's what we're going to talk about on the next podcast. I want to thank everybody for coming. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.